Hi, I'm Jeff Zagudis, one of the medical editors at Prospology. I'm here today with our founder and CEO, Sophie Ash. She started the company out of a desire to help aspiring freelance medical writers live the freedom focused lifestyle of their dreams. It's a mission that's highly personal for her because it came out of a desire to change her own life. And once she had achieved that, she wanted to help others do the same. She's here to share that story with us today. Sophie, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Was healthcare something you were always interested in? How did you come to decide that's what I want to study?
Even by the time I got to university or I had to decide what I was going to study at university, I didn't know what I was going to do. And nutrition was something that was interesting to me at the time. I used to watch all the documentaries and read all the books, and I didn't really enjoy reading. So that was quite a big deal for me. And so I ended up finding myself getting into all this medical stuff, and it was fascinating. I loved learning about it.
So, when you went into university, had you decided right away that you were going to be studying nutrition, or was that something that sort of came during your time in university?
Oh, well, in the UK, you have to have a really clear sense of what you want to study beforehand. There isn't this flexibility that you might have in the US or other places where you can kind of change once you get into it. So there was a lot of pressure to get that decision right. Initially, I actually wanted to go down an art route because I loved creative stuff and I wanted to be an artist.
Really?
Yeah, and I visited the different universities, and I was sort of thinking about a portfolio I would have to put together. And actually, my art teacher at the time told me, "This is not for you. Like, you should not go down this road." And I was like, "Why? I'm the best student you have." And she was like, "Yeah, but you're not going to love it. You're not going to have the freedom and the creativity and like the control over everything that you're doing. And I know that you need that." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, what am I gonna do?" And that was kind of where nutrition came in as something that I was also interested in. I knew that if I went down a science route, there was more likely to be like a future and money and prospects. And so I decided to do that. I've always been someone who likes helping people and I want to make a difference in the world. And I think healthcare allowed me to do that for a while. But I think what I really enjoyed most about my time studying to become a dietitian was more the educational components of it. So teaching other dietitians, teaching other people at the hospital, teaching patients, running workshops, doing presentations, that kind of thing. I really loved that aspect of it. And also, while I was doing my undergrad, I had to write a thesis. And that was one of my favorite parts because even though it was a massive writing project and I'd never done anything like that before, it just came to me quite naturally. And I realized that a lot of people were dreading that. And I was looking forward to it. And I never had any issues at all in getting it done. And I enjoyed it. Writing was definitely something that I've always done and I've always enjoyed doing. I never particularly thought that I was good at it. I never really asked myself that question. I think in school, we're always getting graded for different things. And there's always somebody who just does better than you. And you always
Mhm.
get all this criticism around how it could have been better. And it's
Mhm.
quite a subjective thing as well. So I never really knew that I was good at it until I was doing my thesis, as I mentioned. And my professor was like, "Wow, this is amazing. I don't even have to do any edits here." And I was like, "Oh, isn't this normally how it is?" And she was like, "No, this is not normally how it is." But I've always had a journal and I've always written stuff by hand and kind of used it as a form of expression. And it's something that other people have commented on as well. Like, you're always writing things. I never really was that aware that I was doing that. But looking back, I think I was documenting a lot and kind of using it as a way of expression.
Sort of a way to channel your inner thoughts and sort of really put yourself on a page.
Yeah, and it did later translate more into kind of practical tools that I would create for working in a hospital, working on the wards, like checklists and things that I could refer to while I was doing, stuff with patients. That I would like, I made like a file of facts for myself, and I would show people and say like, "Hey, do you want me to print you one of these, make you one of those?" And so that was kind of a really fun part of like, I tried to find fun ways to make the healthcare stuff more
Mhm.
enjoyable because I didn't really enjoy it. But I liked the aspect again of kind of helping people, educating people, making these resources, which is very well reflected in the kind of work that I'm doing now.
Talking about these different sides of you and these different things that you thought about pursuing. Do you think of yourself as a creative person? Do you think of yourself as a sciency person? Is it a mix? Is it neither? Um, just because I think that really gets to this idea of medical writing. There's really the two sides.
I think for me, the writing part, the communication part is what has always come naturally to me and what I've always loved. I just didn't really know what the topic would be. I didn't really know what I would write about. And so, because I didn't know I could write professionally, or nobody ever presented that to me as an option throughout my schooling, um, I did go down the science route more so because of what I was saying. Like, I can probably make money in this area. And also, I thought about the education aspects of being a nutritionist and how would I explain all the different macro and micronutrients and analyze someone's diet and put that into language that people could understand. And there were a lot of, like I said, handouts and things that I would have to make for patients and things that I would use in clinic to explain things and little diagrams I would make. So there was a lot of creativity in that. And I was always really excited about different ways that I could present information. I just didn't know at the time that that was medical writing.
Mhm.
And so it wasn't until later that I kind of connected those dots together and realized that, oh, you can be paid to be a writer, and that's awesome. But also, if you have a specialty area, and I'd already had the medical education, then you can combine those and it's even more valuable. And so all the light bulbs kind of went off at that point, and I was like, wow, this is it for me.
What was your overall experience with the nutrition field and nutrition and the study of nutrition?
Even back then, like I said, I was doing a lot of writing in relation to healthcare and in relation to my interactions with the patients and the other healthcare professionals. But I still didn't at that time really realize what medical writing was or that that was medical writing. I still was trying to pursue this career of becoming a dietitian, even though I was feeling more and more disconnected from the idea of that. I just did not know what other options there were, and no one was presenting anything to me, and I didn't wanna fail. I didn't wanna admit that I made the wrong decision, and having gotten so far down a path, having to, turn around and come back. So, it wasn't until after I essentially, had to withdraw from that profession altogether because of the burnout and just being so unhappy and just being really unfulfilled with doing that kind of work, that I had to take a big step back and kind of ask myself what else is out there for me. And then I sort of found this online education company that was in nutrition. And I thought, oh my gosh, I could help create these courses. I could help like tutor their students. I could help write their blog. And I contacted them and I was really enthusiastic. And I was like, I want to write for your blog and I want to make these courses and I want to be a tutor. And they weren't advertising for needing help or anything, but I got the sense they were pretty small and just starting out. And they said, well, you can do a blog post as like a test if you want, and then we can assess if you have what it takes to come on. So I did that, and they said, well, there's a lot of room for improvement here, but we do see some potential. So why don't you come in and start building some courses for us and we'll give you training? And so they kind of took me under their wing, and I was
Mhm.
still in university at this time, trying to figure out where I was going to go from there. And even then, I didn't realize I was doing medical writing because I didn't know what it was. But that was my first kind of opening into, oh, you can write professionally and this can be valuable. And because it was in the realm of nutrition, even though I hadn't graduated yet, I knew I had the knowledge and the expertise to be able to contribute.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I stayed with that company for a few years, freelance. until I sort of got into various other aspects of my life and kind of moving around and stuff like that. But it did start quite early on. I just wasn't aware that that's what it was really.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, and you mentioned burnout in nutrition. I wanted to talk about that a bit. I know that it can be common just across healthcare. Can you talk a little bit about sort of where that came from?
Yeah. Well, there's a huge difference between what you learn in the classroom and what you actually do in clinic or in a hospital. And I was not prepared for that. So I was learning all this theory and I love the science, I love the medicine. And I was like, this is really cool. I'm learning a lot. But I had no idea what was expected of me until I actually started to do all the clinical practice work. And that was when it just hit me like a ton of bricks like, oh my God, I have to do this every day for the rest of my life. And the caseloads are unmanageable. You're trying to cram a lot of stuff into an 8 or 9 hour day. You have the commute time back and forth. You have people who don't respect you, who don't understand that you have a really important role, especially in something like dietetics, where people don't really understand what we do or what training we've had. They think, that we're not as important as like the physicians or the nurses or what have you. So you have that extra expectation to go above and beyond. And then, you want to help your patients, but you don't have enough time or energy to actually do that. And then you're going home like studying, looking things up, trying to improve your knowledge, your abilities, and then going back in and doing it again. And on top of that, you have very little time for breaks. You just can't take breaks very often. If you have a long clinic, you're just seeing patients back to back and you never have enough time, and then you have a ton of paperwork and everything to write up. And on top of that, you're in if you're in a hospital environment, you're around sick people all the time. It's a very depressing feel, and like the people are dying, like you come in one day and there's someone there and you come in and the next day they're gone, and it was extremely stressful. And then, the food in the hospital wasn't very nutritious. You're trying to find ways of people bringing in their own food and sneaking things in, and it was just like an overwhelming amount of responsibility. And even as a dietitian, we could have killed somebody if we gave them the wrong feeding regime or something. And it just required so much precision and so much just being on top of things all the time. And being an empathetic person, I was just absorbing all the negative energy from everyone. And it just was not sustainable. So, pretty much immediately as I started to work directly with patients, I was burning out like from day one. And I was just becoming more and more depressed, more and more unhappy, realizing like, oh, this is what I've been working so hard for. I don't want this, And it was debilitating. And I started developing all these health issues, like chronic stomach pain. I wasn't having any periods at all, headaches all the time, not sleeping, really bad skin, a lot of digestive issues, uh, everything you can think of, I probably suffered from it. And yet there was no actual disease that could account for any of it. It was all stress. And that's what I was told every time I had um, investigations. So I was running myself into the ground, and I felt like it was a dead end, And so I really felt like I had to hit rock bottom before I could actually turn things around, because I like I said, I'm a type A person. I didn't want to fail. I didn't want to let anyone down, and everyone else in my cohort was doing well. And I actually had a job lined up straight out of university working as a dietitian, and nobody else had that, and it was in my hometown where I lived. And so to walk away from all of that, it didn't really feel like a choice at the time. It just felt like a necessity, and it felt like a failure.
I can't help but think if we're framing this entire conversation in the context of freedom and the having that sort of openness in your lifestyle, it sounds like the work life balance and the freedom just was not there.
I didn't even have a smidge of it. I didn't even have a taste of it. I had no idea that that was a way that people could live. I just felt like I was walking around with a dark cloud over my head all the time, and I was just becoming more and more dependent on my partner at the time who really enjoyed his work and who just went into the office, came back, and every day he would see me kind of deteriorating more and more, and I would just be more and more emotional, more and more kind of at a loss of what to do, and he would say things like, "I'm sure it's not that bad," and I'd be like, "They're gonna fire me, like, they're gonna let me go, like, I can't do my job." And that is ultimately what happened. I kind of reached a point where they just had to sit me down and say, "Look, you you can't really do this. Like, you can't really do this as well as you need to do it, and we just don't think there's any point in you sticking around." And so I think that's one of the reasons why it felt like a failure, because the decision was taken out of my hands in that moment, because, like, I was a liability to the hospital despite investing every single second of every day that I had into that profession, and having spent 4 years studying it and trying to make that my career. And so it was the most relieving and horrible thing that happened to me. And that was when I started to look into the other options, and then when the writing sort of came to me as an option. But that was a really, really depressing time and a um very difficult period. I think my opinion of myself at that time was so low, and my sense of self-worth and value was just on the floor. And it was compounded with a lot of stuff that had happened in my childhood that had affected my self-esteem, and sort of all these expectations that my parents put on me to be successful. And being the eldest of 3 children in my family, I was expected to do really well. I was expected to make something of myself. And I just felt like I was letting everyone down. I was letting myself down. Um, but at the same time, it was nice to just kind of fall apart for a while, because that's what I needed. And then I think from there, I could rebuild. And a lot of people, unfortunately, do feel like they have to reach that low point before they make a change in their life. But when you have been through something like that, you can sort of readily adapt and pivot more easily, because it's never going to be that bad again. And it does help you build resilience. But yeah, that was for me the only way I could sort of um, make a change, because yeah, I didn't really feel like I was in control of any of it at that time. I just felt like I needed to survive, and I did what I could to get through it.
So when you left the field of nutrition, and you had reached that point where you say you just needed to fall apart, how did you start to rebuild after that?
Yeah, I did a lot of different things actually, because I wanted to make my own money. I didn't wanna just fully rely on my partner at the time. So I worked a lot of jobs on the side while I was studying, and also after my degree finished. I did a lot of nannying work, which was quite flexible, because I could do evenings and weekends with the family, and then fit in my studies around that. I also did a lot of like day camps for kids, tutoring with kids. Um, yeah, basically just a bunch of stuff that involved teaching kids or chaperoning kids. And at one point, I had like 4 or 5 different jobs going at the same time in the summer just to try to pay the rent. I was still pretty unhappy, and I was angry at the whole situation, because I felt like I was an educated person, I was a capable person, but I was doing all these things that just didn't really require my brain. But it was all just a big temporary kind of like mix match of, if you'll give me money, I will take it. If it can utilize some skill that I have, great. But it was never like, oh, I found my thing, or like this is what I really want to do. Like that happened a lot later.
So you talked about flexibility, particularly with the nannying. I think sometimes people might equate flexibility and freedom, but did did it feel like freedom at this point?
No, it didn't. I think what appealed to me about the childcare work was that it wasn't a conventional 9 to 5. It was very much like my hours were based around the family's lifestyle and what they needed to do, and so I kind of felt like an extension of the family. It was still very much like this. I have a long commute. I have long hours. I'm always tired. I have to show up even if I don't feel like it. And there was just this sense of like dread about having to go there sometimes. Again, the depression was quite bad at that time, so there was just always this strong pull to just not show up, you know? But I cared about the family, I cared about the people I wanted to help, so it was kind of that was fueling me at that point rather than my actual enjoyment of the work. But I definitely wouldn't have described my life as having any freedom at that time, even flexibility, not so much. It was just unconventional hours, I would say. The writing, though, was very flexible because I could choose my hours. I didn't have to, even my deadlines, I was kind of creating for myself and I was negotiating that with my boss. So that was quite a different experience. And that was kind of ultimately what carried me through um, my last couple of years in the UK because we moved around a lot and I could take that with me and I didn't have to worry about the commute time and everything like I had to deal with the other jobs. Because before that, it was always like, well, we're kind of in the middle of nowhere. So wherever I go, I have to drive like 45 minutes, half an hour to get to all these different jobs. So I just spent a lot of time commuting and being exhausted. Whereas the writing was the one thing that I could take with me very easily. And even to some of the nannying work sometimes, if there was a quiet period. So that was kind of my first taste of what freedom could be like. And looking back, if that first client had been willing to let me grow with the company, if they had been willing to pay me a bit more when I was more advanced, if they acknowledged that I was making them a lot of money and that I was, they were leaning on me a lot, then I would have stayed with them for a very long time because I loved that work and there could have been a lot of freedom there. But unfortunately, it was just the same all the way through. And so because they were paying me so little, I fell into this burnout cycle again of just working constantly and never quite being able to catch up with myself. And because I was naturally a perfectionist and I really took pride in my work, I would just make a lot of sacrifices to try to get the work done. It could have been great, but it ultimately was sort of like my starter client and I outgrew them in the end.
It sounds like it was just hard to feel settled just sort of in general, at this point in your life. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, in so many ways. I think partly because my partner was the one who had the successful career. And so if he got a new job, we moved together, so we'd have to start up again somewhere else where we didn't know anyone or in a new area. And then, we wanted to minimize his commute time. So he sort of dictated a lot of the time where we ended up. But yeah, and I think also just like I mentioned, this feeling of not having much worth, not having much self esteem, not really knowing where I could contribute value, it kind of added to this feeling of like, I can't sit still with myself. I can't just be with myself. I need to always be doing things and changing things. So I think externally that just came out through like always moving, always redecorating, always, trying to find ways of explaining this dissatisfaction that I had with myself.
Is this when you started to think that maybe you needed to leave the UK?
Yeah, so that was also dictated by my partner at the time because he had a work opportunity in Toronto, which is where I currently live, and he had said, actually, I was the one who said, "I think we need a change. Why don't you ask the company if you can, you know, come out here and start the office?" And And they said, yeah, sure. Like you can be a manager. And so I said, right, we should take this opportunity. We should, just sell all our stuff, start over, get out to Canada, just build a new life. I felt like there was nothing keeping me there. I kind of wanted to get away from all the negativity and all the bad vibes and negative experiences that I'd had. And knowing that he was going to have a job made it feel a bit less risky. But it was really risky because we sold everything. We gave everything away. We just, I had people coming in and out of the apartment every day, like selling things online, and that was kind of my full time job for a while. Is like try to sell all the stuff and make as much money as I can, and really all we could do is just we got our flights. We had a couple of suitcases, and that was it. We didn't have anything to our name. And so it was terrifying and exciting at the same time. But yeah, I really wanted to reinvent myself at that time because I was just so unhappy.
What was the early experience like in Toronto?
It was so exciting. It was really just nothing like I'd ever experienced because I grew up in a really small town. And so even the moving that we had done in the UK was kind of fairly comfortable. But then coming to a new country that I'd never been to before, we were just soaking it in, And I remember like we rented a little boat and like kind of drove around the lake and just looked at the skyline, and it was just like, wow, I can't believe this is where we live now. And that didn't go away for quite a while, and I still really love the place now. But I think the dust kind of settled with realizing, oh, I'm still the same person and I'm still dependent on my partner, and he's the one who has the career, and I'm the one who can't figure out a way to make my own money, who couldn't even be here if not for him and not for the support that the company he was working for was providing. And so, it was a bittersweet feeling, I would say.
So it sounds like there was, a mix of, as you said, enthusiasm and terror at the idea of moving to a completely different country. Did you have any thoughts of what you might do when you got there?
I did have plans to start my own business. I wanted to have a nutrition consultancy company because I thought, making a fresh start, I could kind of plan a little bit before I left, do some research, figure out what steps I had to take so that when I got there, I could start networking straight away. I could make some friends. I could, get some work. Um, I was very naive then because it was my first ever venture into entrepreneurship. So that's partly what made it exciting, but also terrifying because I had no money to actually fund the startup of this company. But in my mind, I had to do all these things like, build a website and have a logo and make business cards. And like, I didn't know how I was going to pay for that. And I didn't know how to get support with any of it. I didn't have any contacts. I didn't have any family there. I didn't know anyone. So it sort of became this huge undertaking that I never expected to be as hard as it was. It was another big experiment, really, but just from a different place. And I remember early on, not long after we moved to Canada, we had our first vacation for a really long time. We went to Costa Rica, and I think it was for 2 weeks. We just had this amazing lodge that had like a fireplace and like a waterfall in the bathroom, and you could look out into the rainforest with like the smoke and everything, and there were little hummingbirds coming, and we had a hammock, we had a hot tub. It was just like nothing I'd ever experienced. And there was sort of a lot of mixed feelings at that time because while we were in this amazing place and I got to enjoy it, I was just thinking the whole time, like, but what am I going to go back to? And like, the only reason I'm here is because my boyfriend is paying for it. And I hate this feeling of dependency. I hate this feeling of like the only time I can have peace is when I escape my life. I didn't want that. I wanted to enjoy my life in the day to day. And I knew this just wasn't a sustainable way forward. And it was just, it's the conventional way. A lot of people, they just do their work, they save their money, they do a vacation once a year or something. And that's it. And I just thought that's not what I want. It can't just be that. So while I was there in Costa Rica, I was doing a lot of journaling and I was trying to figure out, what I was going to do and where I was going to go and how my business was going to work. And it was a very contemplative time. And there was a lot of like tears and a lot of like processing. Um, and that was the first time when things started to improve a little bit health wise because um, I started to get periods again, which I hadn't had for years. And I knew that was because of the stress. Like suddenly the stress was temporarily reduced and my body was kind of like kicking back in. And I was like, wow, this means something, like I have to take this seriously. I have to try to prioritize my health and my career, but I have to do it on my own terms. I have to do it in a way that does not rely on someone outside of me to dictate how that has to be.
And so you had this idea to start a nutrition consultancy business. Why go back to nutrition?
It was the only thing I knew. I told myself that if I did it on my own terms and it was my company, that it would be fine. And also because it wouldn't be in a hospital or it wouldn't be, like someone sets my hours, I get to set my hours. So I thought in my mind, I would have clients, I would teach them stuff, I would help them, I would order all these tests and recommend supplements and stuff because I knew how it was supposed to work because I'd studied it. It just was a lot harder than I anticipated, and I was very naive about what it was going to entail and how to make it successful. And I think ultimately it just wasn't the right type of business for me. I got a taste of what it would be like if I was in business for myself, but it just wasn't the right type of business. I wasn't really driven by the work itself. I was just driven by, this could work in terms of lifestyle. And at the time, I thought it was just because I couldn't hack the regular 9 to 5 that everyone else could do. I thought, there's some sort of defect in me that means I can't do the number of hours everyone else does. Um, and that stayed with me for a long time. And even now I have to kind of remind myself that, we're all different and that maybe we're not designed to be doing, that much work in that way. I'm really glad I did that because I learned a lot about what doesn't work
Mhm.
and what I wanted. And it's still been really valuable to this day. The best way to learn any kind of business is to just start a business and actually work with clients and actually make some money if you can and get a feel for it because you really can't learn it in school, I don't think. And I did manage to get a little bit of coaching and a little bit of support, although it was more kind of on the personal side. But you know, your whole self goes into a business when you're self-employed. And so it really causes you to look at all these different aspects of yourself and assess, you know, can I do sales? Can I do marketing? Can I do accounting? Can I do design? Can I do, you know, all these different facets of it? And I think that's one of the most intriguing and overwhelming parts of it. And I think I spent a good couple of years trying to work all of that out in the beginning,
Mhm.
mostly by myself.
When did things start to shift and you thought this might be something I need to let go?
Well, similarly to the dietetics path, it was kind of taken out of my hands because I was kind of moving in a different direction from my partner at the time in terms of the future that I wanted and the future that he wanted. The more I got into entrepreneurship and the more I realized like this is my future, even if this business is not the one, this is where I want to go. He was very much like coming from this place of like, no, we need to be stable, we need to be predictable, we need to be safe. Like we shouldn't be taking risks. We should be, you know, why don't you just try to get a regular job and save some money before you start taking risks with your business. And it was just incompatible because I had all this energy and enthusiasm and I was like, no, this is it for me. I'm excited. This is what I want to do. And I wasn't getting that support or that like, he wasn't seeing that potential in me in the way that I needed him to. And I just knew I had to break free. And I said to him, I think we need to separate. And I don't know what is going to happen. Like, I don't know if I'm going to have to move back to the UK. I don't know if my visa is going to run out. I just don't know. And so I was lucky enough that he helped me figure out a way to stay in Canada, and he helped me like get my foot in the door with like getting my own place, which was very, very small and very, very difficult to secure because I didn't really have any work experience, especially not in Canada. So it's sort of all of a sudden I could not work on my business anymore because I had no money. And so then the priority became survival again. And this was when I was kind of thinking, well, okay, what do I know? What do I know best? How have I made money in the past? I'll be a nanny again. So that's what I did. I got another full-time nanny role. Actually, it was my first time doing that full-time, just so I could pay my rent. And that was all it did. So yeah, I mean, even while I was nannying, I tried to keep the nutrition business going, but I just did not have any time or energy to spare. And I knew that it was not going to work. I think I just wasn't really allowing it to be true because I didn't want another failure under my belt. But yeah, it was really I wouldn't say it was a choice as much as it was a necessity to let it go.
That's a lot to take in at one time. Did it feel like a step back? Did it feel like a sidestep or a step forward, maybe? How would you sort of characterize that time?
All of the above. It was definitely a huge step back in the sense that I like everything was shrinking. I came to Canada with not much in the way of possession. But then I ended up in this tiny little studio that was just a room with a bed in it and a bit of a kitchen. And my balcony was like the same size as my bathroom. And that was it. That was all I had, and a tiny hallway. And I I couldn't entertain anyone. I couldn't have anyone over. There was nowhere to sit. There was nothing to do. And everything just contracted. And in some ways, I think I needed it to be simple because that was all I could handle at the time. Just work, home, trying to keep my head above water. But in other ways, I think it was a sidestep because I did recognize I can support myself now. Like,
Mhm.
even though this is really friggin' hard and I don't know how I'm gonna go from 1 month to the next, at least it's mine. So that was a really significant kind of evolution for me. But the whole time I was freaking out about what if I run out of money? What if I lose my job? What if, and there was just not a dollar to spare. So I was forced to figure it out. I was just thrown into the deep end. But I could handle it just about because I knew that that's what I was facing when I decided to leave my partner. Because we were together for 8 years, all through university, and then all through that time after university, and then some of the Canadian time. And so I didn't know adult life without him. I had never been on my own 2 feet before, ever. At the same time, I was really hard on myself because I was 26, 27 at the time, and I still felt like I was stuck in the same dead end job that I had when I was, 18, 19. And I still felt like my skills were not being utilized. None of my education was being used. I wasn't meeting any interesting people. I couldn't make friends. I had no social life. I had no hobbies. I had no money. I couldn't travel anywhere. There was no freedom, none. And so I was really hard on myself that I should have been much further ahead. And emigrating in itself makes you feel like everything is delayed, everything is pushed back because you sort of lose years where you feel like you have to gain that back. So all in all, very, very difficult time and not something I would wish on anyone.
When did the next turning point come from there?
When I had gotten over the initial shock of my whole life changing, um, I started seeing somebody else who lived way outside of the city, and so because I had a lot of time to take calls while I was doing all my nannying stuff, we would have phone calls, and he would kind of chat to me about different things that I might want to do next in my career. Every time I was vacuuming, I was like listening to a voice message from him, or I was listening to a podcast about entrepreneurship, or just trying to learn from people who had already done cool things. And it just sort of reached a point where I was so unhappy with the situation I was in. And like I said, there was no wiggle room at all. I couldn't save. I couldn't like move to a different place because I couldn't save. So I wouldn't have a deposit for another place, and I wouldn't have money to like rent a van to move my stuff. So I just felt trapped. The whole thing just felt like I was trapped. And my new boyfriend said, "Well, why don't you just move in with me and my family for a bit and like figure things out?" And I was like, "Are you for real?" Like, it still makes me really emotional just thinking about it, because I needed someone to rescue me. Like, I could not get out of it. And I said, "Well, if I do that, I'm going to have to quit my job. I'm going to have to give up my apartment. I'm going to have to live with your mom and your grandparents in the same house in the middle of nowhere," because it was very out of the way of everything I knew in downtown. So I would be leaving my friends. I would not have any money. I would be dependent on him and his family, which I knew would feel like a big step back for me, but I also knew would potentially be a step forward if I could figure things out during that time. So I said, yeah. And then I handed in my notice immediately. I told my landlord I'm out, and I was excited, and I was tired, and I was scared. But that was another big turning point for me.
Because you said that you felt stuck prior to this. So was there an idea of freedom at this point, possibly by sort of resetting again?
I think anything would have been an improvement at that point. I think um, not working 40, 50, 60 hours a week would have been incredible. Having any money whatsoever would have been nice. Like I didn't have really a high bar at that time. I just did not want to be in this vicious cycle of working, sleeping, working, sleeping. Because the health issues, while there had been a slight improvement when I was with my previous partner, because he was quite stabilizing, they just exacerbated so much during this time when I was doing the nannying again. And so I think that all kind of contributed to the sense of like, I need to get out, and I don't even know or care what comes next. I just know that I'll figure it out. And just because my new partner um, believed in me, when I said, I'm gonna figure it out. If you just give me 6 months, like just let me stay here for 6 months, and then I'll be out. And he was like, okay, that's fine. And that's what we agreed. So I think I just felt like I could turn the page, just fresh slate, do what I need to do. I didn't know what it was gonna be. I had no idea at that time. I just knew that I would figure it out because I had to, and that was just such a great opportunity that I couldn't miss.
Hmm. And it sounds like you still sort of had the entrepreneurship bug. What was starting to develop at that point?
Yeah, so my new boyfriend, he did background acting work, which was it gave him so much freedom, and it paid quite well, and it didn't really require too much energy, and it was fun because he was on these movie sets, and he was doing all this really cool like behind the scenes on these shows that everyone was watching, and it was all top secret, and he got to meet all these celebrities and stuff, and I was like, what the heck? Like, He hardly does any work. He earns so much. He lives in this big house with his family. He has a car. He can take trips whenever he wants. He'd just recently been to Prague in the Czech Republic. And I was like, I want something like that. I want what he has. But I was kind of looking at that thinking, well, if he can do that, what can I do? And I think that's where this idea of what if I became a writer, like in a more serious capacity, and like I made that a thing. And at the same time, I was thinking I'd quite like to do coaching or teaching or something, because that's also something I was interested in. So I actually started my medical writing business around the same time that I started my coaching business, which is now Prospology. I mean, the original idea was I want to help people get out of shitty work situations. I want to help them figure out something that's fulfilling to them, because I don't want anyone to have to go through what I just went through. I will bend over backwards to try to help somebody find something that makes them happy, that makes them fulfilled. And the writing was kind of like, I think I can do well here. I think I can make money. I think I can leverage my medical background and my writing ability. And that can be my bread and butter. And then the coaching can kind of be the fun thing. So having two businesses might be a little bit more stable than having one. And so that's what I did. And that was a great decision. My plan was always to freelance from the beginning, because I really, really wanted that flexibility. But I sort of had a roundabout way of doing it. I thought, what if I applied for a full-time position and then told them I wanted a trial period on a freelance contract, and then turned around and said, I don't want the full-time position. I actually want to stay freelance, because I didn't think they would take me on as a freelancer with no experience. But I thought they might hire me as someone with a healthcare background in a healthcare copywriting capacity. And so I did my research. I did a lot of informational interviews with people who did this, and they told me, yes, you can do it if you kind of leverage what you've done in this way and that way. And because some people believed in me and they encouraged me and they said, you can probably do this, I applied. I had a couple of interviews. I got into this temporary contract situation. So I was full time in agency for a few weeks. And I just ran with it. I was like, I'm networking with all the people, I'm learning all the things, I'm absorbing everything, because I knew I wasn't going to stay. I couldn't, and even during those 3 weeks, I fell into this depression again of like this commute and this long day and all these things I have to do that I might not feel like doing, and having to report to people I didn't really respect. And everything was just so slow and inefficient, and then suddenly rushed and stressful. And I was like, this is not how I want to do life. But I just absorbed everything. I got the connections. I learned as much as I could. And then I turned around and said, I'm out. And that was how it started.
Did you know or have close connections with many other medical writers, particular freelancers at this point?
No. The only people I had spoken to were the people who initially had 20-minute conversations with me over the phone, just to kind of verify that this was the profession I wanted to go into. Um, but when I first got that 3-week contract, those were the people I met. So I tried to talk to as many writers as I could, especially freelancers. And I just kind of gathered people's email addresses, because I figured maybe I can pitch to them later. Maybe I can try to meet up with some of them. But I knew once I got out of that environment, it was going to become more challenging. But it was exactly what I knew it was going to be. It was a big stepping stone to just launch my business. So within a couple of months of starting as a freelancer, I was already making quite a bit of money. And yeah, it didn't take long at all to get started. You don't really need that much to get started. A lot of it is just knowing what to do, and knowing how to do it, and kind of having people who believe in you and support you, and kind of can get the fundamentals out into the world.
So at the same time, you're also thinking about starting a coaching business. As you're thinking about a new coaching role, what did that look like in your mind initially?
Yeah, so as I said, I think it was really driven by this sense of I want to make sure other people don't have to go through the traumatic transitionary period that I had to go through, like, several times. I wanted to condense that into a much shorter time frame for people. I wanted to make it easier and more enjoyable and feel supported, and to help them figure out what they actually wanted to do, because that's the hardest part, is even identifying the thing. And while this was happening, and I started just doing some sessions with people and, like, friends and people I knew to kind of build my confidence with that and figure out where I wanted to go with it. My writing business was just taking off, like, very, very rapidly, and I realized, like, wow, I'm really good at this. Like, I can make a lot of money. I can do a good job. I enjoy it. I kind of naturally take to the sales and marketing side of it. And I didn't realize at the time, but a lot of people struggle with that part. And I was just doing it, you know? So it wasn't until a couple of years later that Prospology kind of started to specialize in the medical communications industry. It just kind of made sense to do that because I'd had so much success on in this business, and the writing business was turning into a medical communications agency. So I brought on a business partner, and I was hiring writers, I was training them, I had a project manager. We had a lot of clients. Our revenue was going up and up and up, and it was a very stable, successful company. And so it only made sense to kind of start helping the writers get established in the earlier stages, kind of where I was a couple of years previously, because I didn't feel like there was going to be any real competition there, and I could sort of help on both ends. So I did
Mhm.
do that for quite a while.
Starting something new while also saying that I want to coach other people in how to do this thing. Can you talk about that a little bit? Just like that, where was your, I guess ultimately I'm curious, where was your confidence level? How are you feeling about yourself at this point?
That's such a good question. At the time, so there was this local community of medical writers, many of whom were freelance in Toronto, who I had met a few times in person. And they were really supportive when I first started my writing business. Just in their first couple of months, I would get a project and I'd never seen it before. And I would say, am I doing this right? Like, do I understand? Am I quoting this right? And that was really invaluable. But what I noticed was, like, very quickly, like within just 6 months, 12 months of me launching the writing business, that I was surpassing them, all of them. I was busier than them. I always had too many projects. I was charging more than them. I was just a lot more successful. And I didn't really realize that that was even happening as it was happening. But people kept coming to me asking me, like, how are you doing this? How are you able to charge X amount when I have 15 years experience and I'm charging Y amount? And I was like, well, I just do it. Like, so I was trying to find the words and the way of kind of teaching it to people. And that's kind of how the coaching ended up aligning with the writing, because I realized you don't have to be that much further ahead than someone to help someone else.
So, your early coaching sessions, tell me a little bit about sort of what those were like.
Yeah, so right at the very beginning of Prospology, like I said, it was just friends. So I would do some coaching sessions and I would say, hey, if you found this valuable, can you make me a testimonial video that explains what you got out of it or what kind of person I am? And then I taught myself how to build a website and I put them on there. And it was a very simple, like, I didn't want all the bells and whistles that I'd had the first time around with the consultancy business, because I had spent years doing all of that and it amounted to nothing. So I was like, I'm just going to get rolling, like, straight away. I'm going to start working with people. I don't care whether they pay me or not. I'm just going to do a good job. So it was quite organic, but it also picked up very, very quickly.
Did it feel at this point like you had made it?
um, well, there was another pivoting moment fairly early on with both businesses in that that relationship was also not working out. And I had given myself a goal of within 6 months, I'm gonna have found my feet. But I was thinking about our future in terms of the relationship, and again, finding myself in this situation where I wanted to grow and do all these exciting things and have this freedom lifestyle and travel and, maybe move downtown again or whatever. And my boyfriend just didn't want to do that. He was very happy with the life that he had. And so again, I found myself thinking, well, great, I have to kind of start over. But I do have something now. I have something of my own that I can try to sustain. So I moved out and I sort of bounced around a bit, kind of on friend sofas and some Airbnbs and hotels, and kind of had to process all of that stuff that was happening. But even then, I was so thankful that I had the flexibility to just tell my clients, I need a little bit of time because I got some personal stuff going on, and nothing fell apart. And that in itself was like, wow, this is incredible. I've never had this before. And so I took a couple of weeks to kind of get myself together. And then I was like, right, well, I'm earning about 50% of the amount I need to survive. So I either have to stop and try to get another job or double down and like grow this thing. So I chose the latter, and yeah, just put my foot on the gas, and then everything just continued to grow. But like once you've got a taste of the lifestyle, you just don't want to give it up.
Would you say you were giving equal time to the coaching and the writing at this point? And did that when did that start to shift?
The writing was so much easier in the beginning. Even training the new writers was quite easy for me. I kind of had a sense of how to do that. And so as the writing business was becoming an agency and we were hiring and expanding and everything, that definitely took priority for a year or so. Um, and that seemed like it was going to be the main thing in terms of sort of setting me up for the future and like growth. But then I started having some disagreements with my business partner who had come in at a much later stage. So he had his idea of what he wanted the agency to become. And I had my idea, and they just weren't fitting together. And there were also some personal um, conflicts there as well in terms of our management style and our leadership style that just weren't compatible. And so ultimately, I decided to walk away from the agency altogether. And that was really difficult because it was incredibly successful and I had built it from the ground up. And, it used to be my company. And by the end of it, it just wasn't anymore. When I left the agency, I could just go all in with Prospology. And so ever since then, which was early 2023, I've just been doing that full time and it's been great.
So now the conversation is shifting to become more of more focused on prospology and sort of where it started. One of the first questions that I think I have is, how did you come up with the name?
I think it was during this notice period where I had to still keep showing up to my nanny job, even though I was already checked out and I just wanted to be building my business. And so I was still listening to all the podcasts and kind of thinking, what am I going to do? What is it going to be? And I knew that it would be something coaching related. So I was just kind of lying in bed one morning. I couldn't sleep because I was too excited about everything and I didn't want to go to work. And I was just on my phone, just kind of noting down like, what kind of feeling do I want it to have? What do I want it to mean? Like, and I wanted to combine two words together into a word so that no one else had used it before, and so that it was special and meaningful. And yeah, and prosper kept coming up because I wanted to help people succeed and thrive, and I felt like it kind of combined those two together. And then ology is the study of like just learning things in general. And so when you combine them, it's just like, it's perfect.
What do you think was different from your previous entrepreneurship uh, efforts? You know, what made Prospology different?
Oh, everything, everything. Um,
We've got time.
it makes me emotional just thinking about it because I mean every single piece of it just comes from a place of love, you know? It comes from like a real piece of me that I never felt like I could give to the world and now I can. And I just wanted every little thing that I had to do to be in alignment with my values and what I believe in and what I love. And not just me, now that we've expanded, you know, it's the same for everyone on the team. Everybody has their own kind of area that they love, that they shine in, that they feel like this is what I love, this is what I do really well. And combined with the freedom lifestyle that everybody has now, that has always been the case from day one, it's just created this really incredible environment where everyone can express themselves freely. They can set their own hours. They can approach their work however they want to. We can collaborate whenever we need to. We can think outside the box. We can constantly be reimagining ourselves and also letting it grow from a place of what our students actually need as opposed to what we think they might need, which can be very different things. So it's just an extension of who I am, and that's a really, really profound difference from what I did before.
So, how would you describe your life now? Do you feel like you're living that freedom focused lifestyle now?
100% every day, all the time. Yeah. I think as soon as I decided that that was how it was gonna be, that's how it's been. Because when you've just had so many instances where you couldn't be yourself or you had to show up even if you didn't feel like it or you were made to do things that you didn't enjoy or weren't in alignment with your values, like when you've done all that stuff over and over again and it never works out and it's never been sustainable, you, you know, it's just different now. And so every single aspect of my life is the way that I want it to be. And lifestyle design is something in itself that I feel very strongly about and something I love to teach and look at with our students is, you know, when do you want to wake up? When do you want to eat? Where do you want to work? How often do you want to travel? Who's going to be around you? Do you want to have your kids at home? Do you want to homeschool them? Do you want to like there's just so many things you could do where actually the lifestyle is the most important thing and the work is just fitting in around that. And because the work is enjoyable because it's all on your own terms, there really is no differentiation between the life and the work aspects, which is my favorite part. I mean, even what we're doing right now, you know, in a studio recording a webinar, we're also just people hanging out who have shared interests and values and you've both had to travel to come here and help me put this together. And so every single project that I do is something that I am really excited about and it never feels like work, you know. Not to say that it can't be challenging or it can't be tiring or it can't be pushing you in a new way, but you want to be pushed because you chose to do that. And that's just a huge thing.
What have been some highlights, maybe for you over the last couple of years as you've really sort of made Prospology your full time 100% commitment?
There's so many. Me and my current partner, we gave up our respective apartments and we went to San Diego for 4 months and we brought our cat with us, Nala. And yeah, she came to California and we rented like these amazing kind of villas and one of them had its own pool, so I was swimming every day, and then we had this really nice outdoor patio area where I was doing the coaching and then kind of envisioning how I wanted the company to evolve and meeting new people um and Brian and I would rent a little boat where you sort of paddle around, like, when you have the pedals and then you moves the boat around, like, that was really fun. We've taken a lot of like long weekend trips, like to Niagara Falls, which was really fun. We've been to Montreal, Quebec a couple of times. I've been all over the US. I get to go to a lot of interesting conferences and do a lot of networking, and it's just great. And now we have a house where we have so many options in terms of where we can work in the house. Like, we both have offices, but we also have a living room area, dining room area, balconies, and then there's cafes and places nearby that we can go to. So, we can both pick up our laptops and go anywhere we want and be productive. And we can also have monitors and keyboards and all, setups that we want as well. And so no 2 days are ever the same.
Mhm.
And it's just, it never gets boring, and there's always something to do, and there's always something to learn. And yeah, every single day just surprises me, and the fulfillment is just like nothing I've ever experienced.
You've achieved that sense of freedom, it sounds like.
Yes. Yeah, it does take a while to kick in once you actually have it, because for a while it feels like, I don't know, a temporary thing, or it's too good to be true, or it's got to come crashing down at some point. And I think all entrepreneurs have that experience like many, many times. Um, but what's nice with something like writing and communications is that it's always going to be in demand. We're
Mhm.
always going to need to communicate what is happening in science, in healthcare, in medicine, and companies and the general public are always going to benefit from that. And they need talented writers to communicate that stuff. So there is really a sense of stability there that comes from, I have the skills not only to deliver a valuable service that pays well, but also to acquire those clients, those projects. So even if things didn't work out with the coaching stuff, or, I was doing a bunch of other things and some things worked, some things didn't, I can always fall back on the writing, even if it's not my main thing anymore. And I've sort of moved past that now. But, it's very comforting to know that it's always going to be there, and no one can take that away from me. Because when you just go from your job to your apartment, back and forth, you're not experiencing anything. You don't know what's out there.
Mhm.
You don't know what life is really all about. How can you really know yourself? How can you really connect with the people you care about? How can you grow? How can you let yourself evolve and kind of explore other avenues? And even within writing, there's so many different types of things you can do. There's so many directions you can take it in. And yeah, I mean, if people want to really go as far as they can with it, we can take them there,
Mhm.
but if they are just kind of looking for more of like a work-life balance, like, I just want to enjoy things, I want to do what I want to do and take on the things that I'm passionate about and say no to everything else, you can definitely do that. Your business needs to be an embodiment of who you are, an extension of who you are. And so the environments that we put ourselves in, the people we surround ourselves with, like how we work and when we work and all these different variables, it changes everything. It changes the whole experience. It can elevate the output of what you're actually putting out into the world. And, once you can feel into all of that and trust that your intuition can guide you to all these cool places, and trust that you got this, you've done it already. And now you're just kind of refining and enjoying and experimenting. It's really fantastic. And that's where something like coaching really comes in, because I've always had coaching myself through all of this to kind of reflect on, well, how is this going? How is that going? What do I want over here? And so I think everybody needs that to some extent. Everybody needs someone who they can trust, who sees this potential and knows how to help them hone that and kind of refine that to what suits them as an individual, as opposed to just like, oh, here, follow these steps that I took. Because I would never expect that somebody would follow exactly the steps that I took in the way that I did it. That's unique to me and my story. but everybody's got their own version of that they can tap into if they work with somebody who really cares and really wants what's best for them.
So, for anyone watching who resonated with any part of your story and thought that I want to be where she's at now, I want that freedom focused lifestyle. How do you and the rest of the Prospology team help help them do that?
Oh, it's so fun. First of all, we prepare them for what's to come because, it is a steep learning curve. And if you're new to entrepreneurship or you're new to medical writing, which usually at least one of those is true, then there is a lot to learn. And you've got to be open to constructive criticism and kind of getting an expert's opinion or a whole team's opinion on how your brand is and all of that. But we want to start by helping them get a really good sense of who they are and what aspects of themselves they want to bring through to their business and their brand. Because a lot of people, if they have had a similar story to mine, they've never really had a chance to even think about who they are, what they believe in, what they value, because they've always just jumped through the hoops that someone else has created for them. And so there's kind of this reframing or this back to the drawing board kind of approach of let's figure out what those things are because they're quite fundamental for everything that comes next. And so then we'll sort of build off of that to help them develop their personal brand. Then the marketing avenues come from there. So we'll get into kind of their writing portfolio. If they haven't already been doing writing professionally, we can help them create some samples that are reflective of their brand and the kind of services they want to offer. And then website design, like logo and company name and how the visuals are going to look and how do you bring that story that relates to your brand together with the samples of the writing that you've done and your services and everything to just package everything up really neatly and kind of offer it to potential clients. And then, of course, we get into kind of like, how do you find the clients? How do you build relationships with them? What is it like? What is that process like? What is that going to entail? What do you have to do? How often are you following up? What does the proposal look like? What is the contract? How do you navigate that? So we definitely get into all the business and administration and legal stuff as well. But it's kind of a process of self-exploration and refining and building as you go. But because there's so much training and feedback and support, and there's a community to it as well, people never feel like they have to figure it out all by themselves.
Tell me more about how you customize the program for each student, because I think that's a strength, a major strength.
Yeah, it is. And that's come about more and more over the years, just as we've had the capacity to do that and as we've had the team expand and also as we've gotten to know different people's needs better. And so I can talk generally about how we approach that as a team. I think a big part of it is understanding where somebody's coming in from. The people who have been really burned out, who are kind of almost running away from something, are coming from a different place than the people who are running towards something. And so there's this energetic difference there that can affect how we interact with them and how we start to shape the way that they relate to entrepreneurship because a lot of people don't even think of freelance writing as entrepreneurship. There's also, like I touched on earlier, this idea that you suddenly don't need to please people anymore in the sense that you can decide how you want to do business, what kind of work you want to be doing, how you want to do that, who you want to do that with. So there's kind of we open their eyes to all these different avenues they could take, and we're looking for signs of kind of a passion or a vision or a purpose that might emerge for each individual, which is going to be, we're never going to see the same thing twice. But we've got to strip away this belief that you're only valuable if you people please, or if you check these boxes or do this or that. It's not true. We're creating something from nothing, and it can be anything we want. And we're not going to let anyone walk away with a business that is not viable or does not light them up or make them want to jump out of bed every day and do it. But they are the ones who are driving the ship, and they're the ones who have to physically put those pieces together with our guidance to create something that is truly unique, that is sustainable for them in the years to come.
So it's business coaching, but it is firmly rooted and starts from a place of developing mindset and self-worth, essentially, is what it sounds like you're saying.
Yes, exactly. The core values and beliefs is actually one of the first things that we get the students to start thinking about, because how can you build a brand on something that's still not very well solidified in your own mind? You can't have an outward projection of your brand or what you bring to the table if you don't have a really solid understanding internally of what you bring to the table and how that is special. And you have to have that drive come from within before you start to think about how to monetize it and who may benefit from that type of service.
And you kind of alluded to this, but do you think people get scared of that word entrepreneur?
Yeah, yeah. But by the time people come into the program, because we do have an extensive application process and there's a lot of different rounds of assessing both ways if this is right for them, they are prepared to work hard and they're prepared to put in what it takes to succeed. Because like I said, a lot of people have come from less than ideal backgrounds in terms of they didn't have the freedom, they didn't have the flexibility, they weren't financially independent, they couldn't make their own decisions, they didn't have as many choices, and they know that all of that can change, and they're willing to do what they need to do to make that change. And so I think they usually come in saying, yeah, entrepreneurship is intimidating and overwhelming, the thought of all these things I'll have to do. But how cool will it be when I can do it well, when I'm surrounded by other people learning how to do this? I mean, you really can't fail when you're around other people who are succeeding, and there's no other option then.
So do people have to come into the program needing to build a business from scratch, or is there also a place for the people who might say, I already have my business started, but I'm deficient in this area?
That's a really good question. And the short answer is yes, there's probably a way that we can support people from different backgrounds. But the long answer, which is important to understand, I think, is that people come into entrepreneurship in very different ways. Just like, my story, everybody thinks their story is not conventional because there really isn't a conventional way. And so even if somebody has started to explore entrepreneurship or start building aspects of their business, that doesn't mean that they've done it from a very grounded place. It doesn't mean that they really knew what they were doing in those early stages. It doesn't mean that they've had success. It doesn't mean that they've built traction. And a lot of times, years could have gone by where nothing's really happened. But yet someone will come in and say, oh, but I have X number of years experience or what have you. The number of years of experience that you have is really irrelevant, just as it was for me and as it is for any entrepreneur. What matters is, do you love what you're doing? Is this a viable business model? Is this built around your values? Is this sustainable? Do you wake up every morning excited to go to work? And a lot of times that's just not the case. And that's fine. But I think what we like to do and what we really excel at is kind of stripping everything away and kind of looking at this individual from a very neutral place of, who are we dealing with here? Like, who are we looking at? Who are we interacting with? And what kind of a business are we trying to create? And just really getting back to the basics in terms of what these objectives are in terms of lifestyle, income, future, travel, family. All these things need to be taken into account. And usually someone's coming into a program because they want to reassess all of these things. They haven't been doing too well on their own, or they haven't been enjoying doing it on their own. And so they need to come in with a very open mind that the way they were doing it may not be the best way for them or the best way to accomplish what they want to accomplish.
I'm hearing an idea of transformation.
Yeah, and that's why it's ultimately a coaching business, because I'm trying to change people's lives. And now, as a company, we're trying to change and better people's lives. I try very hard to communicate the transformative nature of the program. But a lot of the times people come in and they expect it to be like every other course or program out there, where it's like you follow the steps, you do the lessons, you do the coursework, whatever, you check the boxes, and then you end up with some knowledge or a certificate or like a credential or something. It's not very life changing, but they're always so surprised when they realize, like, wow, it was so much more than that. Like, I got everything that I was expecting, but like, it was way more than that. I feel like a different person. Like, other people have noticed that I'm acting differently. I'm showing up to things I never would have shown up for. I'm putting myself forward for things I never would have done before. They see all these possibilities. They have this sense of like control of their time, of their life, and they're just a lot more optimistic, but also grounded. And they just have this sense of like, I've got it figured out. Like I can do it, and I can, you know, I can make this work.
And there is that coursework aspect to the Prospology program, but how is it different from that traditional idea of, getting a degree or a certificate?
So the way that we approach assignments is that things have to get done. You're not here to just learn the theory and then not implement it. So on day one of the program, you're starting to build the business, or you're starting to like rebuild the business if you're rebranding. And so every single assignment that a student has to do is an asset of their business that is going to be useful to them from there on out. And the order in which they do it and the amount of support and training and feedback that they get while they're creating them is just like nothing else out there, because we go all in with everything that we offer our students, and we really, really want them to succeed and to be successful and happy. And so it's completely different to what somebody may have experienced in school. Sometimes we even have students who are enrolled in school. It can complement that, but ultimately it's so much more practical and transformative that it really is incomparable in a sense.
So they end up having both new set of skills as well as tangible assets to help build their business, right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are coming in with a strong education already. They just may not realize how valuable that is or how they can leverage that. And so one thing that I do have to explain to people sometimes that also makes us stand out is that we meet the person where they're at. If somebody has 20 years of experience working in clinical practice, we're gonna work with that. We're not gonna treat them like a complete beginner when it comes to medicine. But if somebody's coming in with some kind of English background or like a journalism background, or like, they've done writing, but it's more informal, or they have a blog, or maybe they've learned SEO, or they've done a business degree, or they have people in their family who've had businesses and they've watched them do that. They come in with different skills, different experiences, different things to bring to the table, and all of that we can work with. And that there's very little that we don't try to work with, because everything that we've done up until this point is valuable. It's just that you can't see it yet.
And then one of the other aspects that I think we need to talk about is the Prospology community. Tell me what the role of the community is and why it's so important?
Yeah. It's one of the best things that we have, like, period. Like I said, there's a very rigorous process that people go through in order to get accepted into the program. And so because we've already vetted everybody, everybody just gels so well. You know, we all just have a lot of things in common, and yet we still have so much diversity, and we realize that we're all valuable in different ways. And so there's very much the sense of, well, I know about X, so I'm going to help with that thing. And oh, this person knows about Y, and they're going to help with this thing. So not only are we hosting trainings and events and networking things all the time as a team, we also get our students and our graduates to step up, and we recognize them and we say, wow, you did an incredible job with the slide deck. Can you show the students how you did that? You know, oh, your resume looks incredible. Like, how did you format that in Word? You know, can you show people how you did that? So there's this constant kind of giving back to the community that everybody has as well, which is so nice. And it just comes about so naturally when everybody's um just they're not competing with each other. They're there to like lift each other up, and they genuinely care about each other and wanting to see everyone succeed. So there's kind of this ecosystem of just inspiring positive energy that is based on like the real landscape that everybody's navigating right now. And on top of that, we're all in different parts of the world, you know, Europe, Canada, US, UK, whatever. And we're all experiencing things slightly differently, and we're all specializing in different things. And so it just adds to this kind of expansive feel to being in the community, because if you are traveling or if you are moving or you are wanting to have clients in one part of the world or work in one area versus another, there's already somebody there who's done that or who was also thinking of doing that. And so you just can't put a price on that.
How does that tie into the base idea of freedom and a freedom focused lifestyle? Do you feel like that helps others see that freedom is possible for anybody, even if it might not look exactly like what they're seeing? Do you feel like that helps create sort of a positive feedback loop?
Yes, 100%. Yes. And we're always celebrating all these little milestones that every student or graduate has. And we're also fostering those relationships long into that person's career if they want to stick around. So we don't kind of say, oh, you know, you graduated, so you just have to leave now. We've definitely tried to, you know, make it a valuable long term asset for people so that they feel like they're a part of something really special. And so, one thing I love is that success and progress looks very different from one person compared to another. And we want them to celebrate what matters to them and what counts as a step forward for them. So for some people, a lot of people, that's travel. You know, we have graduates saying, well, I'm fully booked within a couple of months of launching my business. And now I'm going to Greece or Peru or something to do my business over there. And that's what they really want to do. And then we have other people saying, well, I've just had a baby and now I get to spend all this quality time with my baby and also have my business. And there's other people who are kind of more prone to burning out or overworking, and they'll say, I just let go of this client that I wasn't in love with and I feel great about it. I've just made space for this whole new thing that I feel really excited about, that pays better, where I have a great relationship. And then other people, you know, who may be more timid about putting themselves out there, they'll say, I sent out all these pictures this week and I heard back from this company and like I've started posting and someone saw this comment and they want to interview me about this. So like we know like how significant those things are to those people, and they all get to express that freely, and they're never being judged and they're never being belittled or compared or anything, because we all know that we're on different tracks. But collectively, there is this freedom focused lifestyle that everybody has and everybody is building. And it's just incredible to be a part of that and to facilitate that and to kind of like let everybody shine on their own and also as a collective.
There's nothing else like having like-minded people around you to support you and push you also at the same time.
Yeah. And this is what a lot of courses or programs are lacking is that maybe they have a good curriculum, maybe they teach something really well, maybe they have a wide range of topics that they cover, but they don't have the community that we have. They don't have this curated group of really driven, really intentional, really smart, capable, skillful people who have just said goodbye to traditional careers and like yes to I really want to build something exciting that I love. They don't have that and they don't have this ability to adapt everything every step of the way. They don't have the capacity to have a whole team of people like looking and kind of curating and like analyzing somebody's business from all angles to keep tweaking and adapting and like making sure that it's great and it's going to work. And so, because everyone on the Prospology team has this value of we prioritize freedom and flexibility, and we all work remotely from all parts of the world, we all travel, we all have other projects, hobbies, interests, relationships, families, whatever it is, and it's all integrated with our work. So that infiltrates into all the work that we do. And it just adds to this like magical feeling of like, anything's possible.
And that was going to be my next question was tell me a little bit about the Prospology team and sort of how they fit in here.
Well, just as the students are evolving all the time and kind of finding themselves and figuring out which kinds of clients they love working with and all this stuff, we're all doing that as a team as well, including myself. So somebody's role today may not be the same as it is 6 months from now or a year from now because everything's always evolving. But what always stays consistent is that we really care about the students' progress and we really want to give them as much constructive feedback as we can. We really want to like work well together as a team and in their interests and sort of like helping move things along. Um, as a coach by myself, I cannot do anywhere near as much as I can do when I'm a part of a team. And I'm not great at everything, and no one is great at everything. So what I love about the team is that we each stay in the zone of genius that we respectively have, and we collaborate to kind of enhance those skills and those contributions. And collectively, this is why the program is so transformative in many ways, because it isn't just the input of one person. It's not just me showing up saying, I can teach you this or I can show you that. It's that compounded with everybody that you interact with on the team and within the community. And many of our team members have actually come from the program themselves, such as you. And they can really speak to what that was like for them and see things evolving for the newer students as well. And so, yeah, the team is great. I love the team.
So, Sophie, what is your final message to anyone who's watched this far and is ready to make a change?
Yeah. So I will speak to you directly if you're still watching. There must be something about, either my story or the company and the values that we stand for, that we represent, that really aligns with who you are as a person. And so I think if you're being drawn to being a part of a community like this, you're not going to find it anywhere else. That's us. Um, so the first step is obviously going to be making the application to the program. And so while I want to get a sense of who you are and like if you're a good fit for our community and how you're going to contribute, don't feel like you have to have everything figured out coming in, because the whole point is that we're going to help you figure it out. So just be honest about where you're at with everything. I think that's my best advice. Just be fully transparent about where you're at, what you're struggling with, what you're apprehensive about, what you've done, because we want to meet you where you're at. And then that way we can have a conversation around, does it make sense for you? And if so, when, how? Because a lot of things are flexible in terms of like the duration of the program or how much coaching you have and how we customize all of that. So we'll have to talk through all of that. But my secondary uh, recommendation would just be to follow us and check out all the stuff that we put out into the world. We have a great YouTube channel. I always put out new articles on LinkedIn. Our newsletters are great on Sundays, so you can subscribe to those and just follow us and start kind of learning and hearing the stories of our graduates and reading the recommendations and watching some of their testimonial videos, and then when the time is right, we're here. Um, but if it's not a good fit, it's not a good fit, and that's totally fine. We're never going to push somebody down a road that they don't want to go down. But if something's resonating with you, I think it's worth exploring, and that's what we're here for.
Sophie, thank you so much again for being here today and sharing your story to hopefully inspire others to take the impetus to make that change.
It's been really great chatting with you, Jeff. Thank you so much.